Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is part of our conversation series. I'm just one voice in this relationship diversity movement, and it's important to bring more unique perspectives into the conversation. Today, we'll be talking with Karyn Wittmeyer, a mental health and sex therapist whose work focuses on non-monogamy. She brings almost a decade of experience into our discussion and offers valuable insight for anyone wanting to explore this relationship structure. Here's a little bit about Karyn. She's a licensed mental health therapist and sex therapist who runs a private practice therapy group. Her work focuses on non-monogamous and queer individuals and relationships. She's been a part of the non-monogamy community and participated in the research community for about a decade. She recently created a course for people hoping to deepen their relationship skills that brings all of her experience together as someone who is non-monogamous, who has built non-monogamous community, and who has worked extensively with people in non-monogamous relationships. So let's get into the conversation. Hello and welcome to this episode of Relationship Diversity Podcast. I have Karyn Wittmeyer. Is that how you say your last name?
That is. Thank you.
Awesome. I have Karyn Wittmeyer with me. I am so excited because she has such experience in non-monogamy, and she has participated in research for over a decade and has so much information about this relationship structure and all that goes into it. And so I want to welcome you, Karyn, here on the podcast. Thank you. I'd love to start with your story, your journey, your relationship journey, and how you got here in this moment and with all of the work you're doing in the non-monogamous community.
Yeah, well, it's been quite the journey, certainly. It started a long time ago. I think there have always been hints that I wasn't good at monogamy, or it wasn't the right thing for me. I always had this, well, if I'm, why does dating someone automatically give me jurisdiction over their genitals? That just never made any sense to me. But I didn't really have a word for it, or I didn't understand. I just, monogamy was the thing. We didn't have any other examples of things. And so I just kind of went about it that way. And then, in the mid 2000s, it started percolating through, I saw an episode of like Penn and Teller's bullshit. And I was like, oh, that's the thing, right? Open relationships. That seems so much more like what I want. And I tried to introduce the concept to my partner at the time. And, like many times, he was not very open to it. And then, things happened. We had to move out to a different state for the economy collapsed around us. We had to move to a different state to get jobs. And I didn't really know anyone in that state, and, kind of had to kept pushing for this. And we met another couple, and we ended up starting to date them and formed a quad. And it didn't last very long. And we ended up eventually as a triad dating the other one of the people in the relationship. And they ended up starting a group on Facebook to start meeting other non-monogamous people. And that was really great. Like, they started throwing people from OkCupid in there. And just to have board games. And they didn't have the time to admin the group. So they just kind of said, "Hey, can you take care of this?" And I was like, "Sure." And, um, I was sort of hosting these smaller events. And the next thing I know, there's like 1,000 people in the group, and I have a bunch of admins,
Wow.
and we're having these monthly giant meetups,
Mm.
and I'm going to lunch with people, all the time, just meeting people off of OkCupid. And if, I didn't want to date them, then I would just throw them in the group and say, "Hey,
Mm.
come to one of our meetups and maybe you'll meet someone else that you like," right?
Eh.
And at the same time, I found this Eli Sheff, who is an
Mhm.
author, has done a bunch of work, had a Yahoo group on research, the research community. And so I joined the Yahoo group. I was finishing up my undergrad in psychology and was doing, the kind of research that you do in undergrad, and
Mhm.
talking to a lot of people about their experience with non-monogamy. So I just really got into this. There was not a lot of online resources, not a lot of books. I think The Ethical Slut and Opening Up were about the only two around at that time. So I was just really kind of disappointed in the options, right?
Mhm.
Anything that you're getting in the media was all white people, all pretty straightforward, cisgender, heterosexual, these
Yeah.
very uh standardized relationships. And so after a few years of running the group, I had met my current partner not long after we started that group, and who is still in my life, and years later met my other partner. I live with two partners now and a
Mhm.
house, and the guy that I was dating at the time, we eventually parted ways. We're still good friends, but just different things happen, right? Relationships, they come and they
Right.
go sometimes, and this is what happens. Um, and eventually I went back to grad school to finish my degree because I decided at that point I wanted to go into becoming a therapist. I noticed that a lot of people wanted therapy, but they
Yeah.
kept coming up against therapists that didn't understand non-monogamy, kept blaming the relationship structure for the problems.
Right.
Right. Like, you just need to be monogamous and then all your problems would go away, as if that's the problem. So I go back to graduate school. I spend 3 years studying becoming a therapist and come out into private practice. And I openly advertise that I'm non-monogamous. I work primarily with non-monogamous clients, and I was basically full instantly. It took
Wow.
a little
What year
time.
was this that you're talking about?
I graduated in 2020.
2020.
So
Okay.
right,
Wow. Yeah.
right as the pandemic like it got under
Uh-huh.
swing. So people were also just really wanting help with everything in general.
Yeah.
And no one's really dating in 2020, like, not really, right? It was very
Yeah.
difficult to date at that time. So there were just a lot of other things going on as well. But I work with a lot of, it's not just non-monogamy. I work with a lot of queer clients as well. There's a huge overlap in these
Mm-hmm.
communities, and a lot of kinky clients. So
Mm-hmm.
just the overlap is huge. And most therapists aren't out there, even if they work with these, don't advertise that
Mm.
they're often very general in the way that they advertise. So I was very clear that I'm okay working with this, all these populations. And I've just been working with it since, because there's not, and a lot more books have come out, like good, really good, solid books.
Mhm.
Not a whole lot of them from therapists, though, from a
Mm.
therapeutic point of view. A lot more, people have a lot of experience in non-monogamy, but it's very general. They'll often say, this is the way to do it, but they don't really give you a good roadmap of how to get
Right.
to that way.
Yeah.
So I wanted to develop a class that gives people a better roadmap of how to get there.
Mm.
So I came up based on my experience working with clients. And oftentimes, my clients, they're non-monogamous, and they also have other stuff going on,
Mm.
right? And they just don't want their therapist judging them for the non-monogamy or saying the non-monogamy is the problem. right?
Right.
So the non-monogamy is just a part of their identity or the thing that they're doing, and they also have like relationship problems. Okay,
Mm.
and so I'm there to help them with the relationship stuff, and there also happens to be this non-monogamy going on around it, and so a lot of the work that I do is helping them navigate non-monogamy in a way that is not judgmental about the relationship style.
Yeah, because I find even with my clients is it doesn't matter what structure they're in.
Mhm.
They're themselves, and all of the wounds and the things that they're wanting to heal will show up in any relationship style and any relationship structure. And to have a place where they can come to that is accepting, and loving, and just,
Mhm.
allowing them to be who they are, I
Mhm.
think is a healing in and of itself, because a lot of people are judged for their choices,
Mhm.
having to do with all different kinds of parts of their lives. And so I guess one of the questions I wanted to start with is, in the 10 years that you said it's been about 10 years you've been in the community, the ethically non-monogamous community. h- How have you seen the growth and kind of the coming out of this structure? Because I find that, it's so much more prevalent, right? Since 2020, people hear about it more, people talk about it more, it's more out in the media. And so I think maybe before then it was more underground. And so there's kind of been a like coming out, a birthing of this relationship structure in terms of in the light. It's been happening for a very long time. And in fact, a lot of people say that that's really where we came from before, long, long ago.
Mhm.
There was more polyamorous, more non monogamy. That was actually more common than monogamy,
Mhm.
hundreds of years ago. But I'm curious just what you've seen that journey been as a community and as an idea and as a structure, as like a coming out, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
I think it is a little bit more about people being honest with themselves
Mhm.
than it is anything else, and more about egalitarian structures, wanting more honesty and egalitarianism in their relationships, because cheating's been going on forever, right?
Exactly. Right. Non-monogamy has been going on forever. It's just, is it
Yeah,
ethical or is it not?
yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are people doing it and bothering to tell their partner about it?
Right. Right.
And when you have it out in the open like this, you start to pay attention to safer sex practices, and being more honest with your children about it,
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
and just being honest with each other about it. And you're still going to run into the same mistakes and attachment
Mhm.
wounds, and it's not like you can't cheat when you're non-monogamous. People
Mhm.
still cheat all the
Yep.
time. It just takes on a different form
Mhm.
of cheating, right? And it makes you confront what your motivations are around
Mhm.
it, rather than just having it, oh yeah, my partner goes off and cheats and we just don't talk about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
instead of having it in the background, now we talk about it a lot more.
Yeah. And there's a lot of healing that can come from that.
Mhm.
My parents were in a non-monogamous relationship that was not ethical, i.e. cheating. And for me, it was like making the choice to be non monogamous, ethically non monogamous, was like calling back my power of this is how it is done in a way to honor the feelings that are normal that come up,
Mhm.
and also doing it in a way that supports and honors, my husband, and calls back my power, and like it was such a healing, I think, from the experience I had with my parents and what I saw. Um, I want to ask you about identity.
Mhm.
Okay. Because I think the way that you talk about it, you have always identified as non monogamous, polyamorous. Um, and is that who you find mostly coming to you, wanting to explore non monogamy? Or are there also people who maybe don't necessarily identify as non monogamous, but also are curious and maybe have other reasons to want to explore the structure?
I I think the question of identity, there are some people who definitely are very non-monogamous feel that it's strongly a part of their identity, and a lot of people who sit in the middle, right? Who just
Mm-hmm.
aren't quite sure. And people often, I think the hardest thing that I see is people who feel like they're fairly non-monogamous, but every time it gets difficult, they want to go running back to monogamy because
Yeah.
it's the default. And it's like,
Right.
okay, it's the default, not necessarily because it's actually easier. It just feels easier because society has set it up to be easier because everything supports the non-monogamy or
Right.
the monogamy.
Right.
But it's not really, right? Like it has just as many difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different, or they're masked by the way that we've set our society up.
Yeah. So when someone comes to you and says, I'm interested in opening up my relationship, what are some of the questions that you ask them to just bring some clarity to, why they want to do it, or, to, I guess, set them up for success if they
Yeah.
really come to you and they want to do this? What are the kinds of things that you would ask them?
Mhm. The first thing is, what are you hoping to accomplish something, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of people think that it's going to fix something about their
Mm.
relationship, and
Yeah.
it's not, especially when it comes to like desire discrepancy. Since I'm also a sex therapist, I work with a
Yeah.
lot of desire discrepancy. It's not going to fix your desire discrepancy. You usually end up with, one person going out and getting the sex they want, but people aren't one-to-one replacements for each other. So it
Right.
just creates more problems around the messages you have in your head around how you should be feeling about the desire in your relationship.
Yeah.
And you still end up with jealousy problems, for instance. So this is just one example of how people think that they're going to fix a problem in their relationship with non-monogamy, when really they're just exacerbating that problem.
Yes. So,
Um,
how would you lead them through that? Would you have them focus on their relationship, their current relationship, or what are the kinds of things? I know, obviously you do long, therapy with them, but just what would be the direction you would go in with someone
yeah.
who came to you with, let's just say, that desire discrepancy, and yeah, how would you move forward with them?
So I might do like a two-pronged approach where I would focus on both the messages that they have around the desire,
Hmm.
and is that, knowing that, then is there still something in the non-monogamy, right? I don't want
Mm,
to discount the non-monogamy, but like, let's separate these two into two different problems, right?
mm,
And examine them independently of each other. And if they still want to open up, I'm not going to say you got to fix the desire discrepancy before you open up, right? Because you're never going to get a relationship perfect. It just doesn't exist, right?
Ruth.
Right. So
Yeah.
like, but deal with them separately. And I guarantee that, like, if you're still interested in the non-monogamy and the going out and having sex with other people is going to bring up a lot of stuff around the desire discrepancy that needs to get worked on, that you're probably not going to see in the monogamous relationship, right?
Mm,
So it's going to bring up a lot of extra stuff that's good to work on, right?
hmm.
Going to bring up extra cracks, but they're cracks you're going to need to work on anyway, and you're going to want to work on them, right? It's just going to accelerate the process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that desire to want to continually evolve and heal and grow, with my clients, that's what I find: the people that experience the most success
Mhm.
opening their relationship, and then going fully into, this non-monogamous relationship, are those people who are like, I'm committed to working on my stuff. I'm committed
Mhm.
to, I know that it's, and I think it's really interesting because when you bring more partners into it, you realize that it's not about the other person. It's like, when it was, that was like me when I was doing my deep, deep healing. I realized that, oh, what's the common denominator of all of those relationships that I've been in? That's me. So I need
Mhm.
to look at me and work with, what's going on with me. And then it really ended up shifting all of the relationships. So it's very backwards from maybe what we're shown or what we're taught. What would you say would be like the people who you work with and even the people in the community who are like, yes, this has been such a great experience for me? What do you feel is some of the characteristics that those kind of people have?
Yeah. I think the ability to self-confront
Mm.
is the big one, right? The ability to look at yourself and go, wow, I was screwing that up. And I
Yeah.
need to do something about it. And not necessarily go to the shame
Yeah.
narrative as much, be able to pull out of the shame narrative and into the like, okay, I can do better at this, right? There
Hmm.
is something here I can improve on, and not just get stuck in the like, I'm a piece of crap,
Right.
setting.
Right. 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 What are some of the societal beliefs? Because monogamy is so ingrained in
Mhm.
our society, which I think is something that is opening up over the last few years, which is nice to see, but it still is really the, main relationship structures. And what do you see people deal with in terms of either familial or cultural programming that they need to work through in order to embrace an ethically non-monogamous relationship?
I think one of the biggest things I think I see is that I need to be special to someone. I need to
Mm.
be the really, like, I need to feel extra special in a way that invites comparison. Um,
Uh-huh.
the wanting to feel special, I don't think is difficult, but the I need to feel special, more special than someone else, right? It
Yeah.
can be very difficult for people to break down. I need to be someone's singular something can feel very um, isolating also.
Yes. I love that you said that because that's something definitely that I came into my journey that I was definitely came into awareness of, oh, I have this really ingrained desire to feel the most special.
Hmm.
And how do you help people with that?
Yeah. There's it's usually a external validation thing, right?
Mm.
People who need this external validation. So
Mhm.
there's usually some figuring out why the external validation. Why is that needed? Where are you going with that? What does that get you? And how do you start to internally validate? So often I go to parts work with people on
Mhm.
this, right? What's the inner child that never got validated? How do you learn to validate that inner child that is looking for that yourself instead of trying to find someone else to validate that inner child?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh. And that definitely is more empowering when we learn how to validate and make special our own inner child and go through that process.
Yeah.
Ooh, big stuff. So tell us a little bit about your program. I'd love to learn more about what you do if someone feels, that they're looking to open up their relationship and they need some guidance and support.
Yeah. It's a 6-part course. The non-monogamy 101 class, I try to keep it different from the other books out there that are 101 level stuff. It's a little bit more on basic tools that you need for the journey, right? A needs wheel, an emotion wheel, these sort of needs that set you, these sort of tools that set you up for uh, other um, the other classes, right? So
Mm.
it's more just a set of tools and, some basic definitions in case you do
Mhm.
really need some of the 101 stuff. But I try to make it a little bit different. A class on building agreements and when you need to say, turn your agreement into a boundary, right?
Mm.
So you've built an agreement, somehow the other side of the agreement keeps getting broken. All right, why might that be happening? So I give like a checklist based on other people's work. And I always try to acknowledge that some of this is based on other people's work. I want to acknowledge those people that I'm standing on the shoulders of. All right, so a checklist of why your agreements might fail and how to turn into boundaries when they do that. Jealousy, how
Mm.
to confront your jealousy, where your jealousy might be coming from. A
Yeah.
lot of tools around how to really examine your jealousy and start to break it down, depending on where it's coming from, how to have safer sex discussions, how to think about safer sex topics, how to identify where maybe you need more pleasure over here or more pleasure over there, how to really script a safer sex conversation so that you feel comfortable having it and practicing it. Then a class on new relationship energy, so that you understand what it is and how it's going to affect you, how to see red flags through NRE, because when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all red flags just look like regular flags.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then a class on metamors, right? How to have relationships with metamors or not if they don't want a relationship with you.
And we'll just say like metamors, just even what a metamor is. If you're not in this kind of structure, you may not know. Would you define that?
Yeah, metamor is my partner's other partner.
Yeah.
So we have those classes, and they come in a bundled package. And they're in a very specific order to help you make it through. And they come with like worksheets to help you really set in and journal your way through each of the classes.
I love that. And I really encourage anyone who is considering this journey to check that out, because I have found with, my work with clients and myself, that the more prepared you are and the more you're willing to actually have these conversations before you even venture into it, the more you set the foundation for success, whether you continue with that structure, with the, whether you like really fully, launch it or not. It will really set you up to know more about yourself, know more about your partner, and know more about, your values, what's important to you, and also to be a little bit more prepared with some of the things that might come up. Because I love where you're talking about jealousy. When I was really exploring jealousy, because I always talk about jealousy as like a surface emotion. It's really just at the top, but there's all this stuff underneath it. And that's where I came to the belief and the feeling of wanting to be special. That was actually the jealousy was covering that. So if I had stopped at that and not gone underneath it, I would never have gotten to that really golden opportunity to heal. So Karyn, can you tell us where people can find you? And of course, I'll link this in the show notes, but where can we find you and find your course?
Yeah, the course is at nonmonogamyacademy.com.
Okay. Great. So I'll link that in the show notes. And anything else you want to leave us with before we say goodbye?
I think that's all I have. I really appreciate coming on today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience, because like I said, where I'm, looking at it's just like so out in the, not so, but more out in the open over these last few years. But having someone like you who has real experience, like you have long-term experience, because I would say a decade is long-term when we're talking about this movement. So thank you again for sharing your wisdom. Thank you. Everyone check out Karyn in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, KaryJaroslaw.com, Instagram, or TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Are you feeling stuck or unfulfilled in your intimate relationship? Do all your relationships end in the same way? Do you feel like you've lost the spark in your current relationship? Can you never even find one person who you want to explore a relationship with? If you answered yes to any of those questions, are sick and tired of feeling like a failure in your relationships, and desperately desire a different experience, then my 8-week deep reprogramming intensive may be the answer for you. In this program, I work individually with you for 8 transformative weeks. We'll identify the subconscious programming that's keeping you stuck and shift it to a new affirming belief systems. We go deep, we get real, we get results. This is healing unlike anything you've ever experienced before. Here's what people are saying. Jordan from North Carolina said, more has shifted in 8 weeks of working with Carrie than 10 years of psychotherapy. Jane from Sanford, North Carolina said, it's honestly changed my life. And Cassie from Santa Barbara, California said, Carrie's laser precision in helping me diagnose where the stuck energy was helped me make positive movement in our first session alone. Absolutely transformational. I love being a guide and witness to these courageous people who claim that they were done with their past experiences and ready for something different. I'm opening a limited number of spots for 2023 and would love to help you permanently transform your relationship experience. To set up a free 30-minute clarity call where I'll help you uncover your number one block to fulfilling relationships, connect with me through the link in the show notes. You are worthy of experiencing deep fulfillment and love in your relationships. This intensive work will help you get there.